While you're standing tonight, go ahead and grab your Bible. Let's go to Matthew chapter 14. Matthew chapter 14. While you're turning to your place in the Scriptures, we'd like to express our thanks to you for being in revival service tonight, trusting that God's going to bless us and help us in this meeting. And I'm thankful for what has already been done, that God has helped and moved and touched lives. God's already been dealing with hearts. He's been dealing with hearts. And I thank God for that. I appreciate God for that. Do I think there's more that still needs to be done? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am, I do. I feel like I need to preach. So while you got your place marked there at Matthew chapter 14, hold your finger there and flip over to Mark chapter 6. Two places we're reading, Matthew 14 and Mark 6. If you found that place, you may say amen. And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit. And they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. Careful what you ask for. Jesus said, Come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid and began to sink. He cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him, and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. Then they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying, Of a truth, thou art the Son of God. Now, Matthew also records this story. Mark also records this story. And he puts a little more detail in it that I want to bring to your attention. Mark chapter 6, verse 48. And he saw them toiling in rowing. Mark gives us what they're doing. For the wind was contrary to them, and about the fourth watch of the night he cometh unto them walking upon the sea, and look at this, and would have passed by them. But when they saw him walking upon the sea, they supposed it had been a spirit, and cried out, for they all saw him and were troubled. And immediately he talked with them and said unto them, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. You may be seated. From this text tonight, I'd like to preach you a message entitled, Storm Walking. Storm walking. To grasp a hold of this, and I need you to stay with me tonight, there's a lot to cover. But we look at a story here in this narrative that is filled with a lot of emotion. There is extreme emotion. To understand what's going on, Jesus has been preaching and he's been teaching, and he has just fed 5,000 men plus women and children. Theologians say approximately 15,000 people with two fishes and 5 loaves. Incredible miracle. Incredible miracle. But as this is finishing up, and this would be outside in the wilderness on the outside of Bethsaida, there is such impression upon them, thousands of people that they want to make him a king. And so he begins to make arrangements to try to work out of this situation because he knew his kingdom wasn't being set up yet. And so it was that as he is beginning to disperse the congregation, he instructs those disciples to cross the sea. And they are obedient. They go get in the ship, they set sail, and sometime they begin to row. Going, doing, obeying what Christ has said to do. May I pause here a moment and tell you, just because you're in a storm does not mean you're in a storm because you disobeyed. Sometimes you may be in a storm because you did obey. So don't judge the storm to your spiritual integrity, because we all face storms. Now, on the same token, sometimes we do face storms because we bring them on ourselves. But we see now that evening has come. Jesus is dispersing the crowd. Disciples have set sail. And Jesus has went up into the mountain, the Bible said, alone. And while he is in that mountain alone, he's gone there to talk with his Father. It's incredible to me that the Creator, not the creation, but the Creator, who has all control over mountains, seas, winds, waves, storms, knows when waves is going to be increasing, when winds is going to be blowing. Now, if you're much of a Bible reader, you know that this is not the only storm those disciples have come into, because you'll find another story where Jesus had instructed them to go to the other side of the sea, and the storm began to rage, and Jesus was on board that ship resting. And they went to the hinder part of the ship, and they woke him up. And he come up and spoke peace to the storm. But now, Jesus is not physically on that boat as of yet. I feel like our spiritual walk is progressional. I feel like it's progressional. Because you understand, for babes in Christ, you give them the milk of the Word, specifying just small ones in faith as they begin. Maybe those disciples, when Christ was in the boat in the other storm, wasn't ready to be in the storm without him physically being on board. But now, they have just saw a miracle happen, and he gives them an opportunity to go without him on the boat. Now, sometimes you may feel like this is the hardest battle I've ever faced. This is the hardest place I've ever walked. This has been the most trying trial that I have ever been in. But who's to say God is seeing growth in you? And while He may allow you to walk through those places, back then you weren't ready to face what you're facing now. But now you are ready by the power of God to face that storm. I hope you're going to help me preach tonight. We look at this text and understand that they have been rowing now for some time. And while Jesus is on that mountain of praying, that the wind gets contrary and it gets boisterous. When you got water and you mix it with wind, then you get waves. And so now we behold disciples that were obedient, doing what Christ said, but they have encountered a storm as they try to obey God. And they are fighting it. They have probably pulled down the sail. They have probably pulled out the oars and stuck them out and trying to maintain course, trying to stay on the right side of the water and keeping the water on the bottom side of the boat. But they are in a storm. And it seems like everything that they're trying to do is not accomplishing anything at all. They have exhausted their resources. They've exhausted their knowledge. They're probably exhausting their strength. Now you say, well, they were disciples. What do they know about boats and water? Some of them were fishermen. It wasn't their first time they'd been on water or in a boat. And so here they are facing the storm. And they're tossed to and fro. Understand that fear has now taken its grip upon them. Understandably so. Because when you're out of control, when you're out of control, it does get dangerous. When you have spiraled out of control, you need a higher power to step into where you are and try to hold things together. We look at disciples as trying to maintain a course, but the Bible said that they're tossed. They may not know which way they pointed now, but understand this, that it's then got to be the fourth watch. It's early morning. It's probably somewhere, I would say probably between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning. Dark. Windy. Water. Fear. Hope. Despairing. Falling short. It's a storm. Is this sounding familiar to you? Is it sounding familiar? Understand that they have simply tried to be obedient, to do what God has called them to do. But they have encountered a storm, and they don't know what to do, where to go. At one point in the scriptures, they could always run down to the bottom of the ship and wake up Christ, but Christ is not at the bottom of the ship. It's frightful. It's confusing. I'm sure the thoughts probably crossed their mind. I'm doing what's right. I'm doing what He told me to do. And it looks like it's fallen all to pieces. I have been obedient to the jot and to the tittle of what Christ has asked me to do, but it is falling apart. I am out of control. My destiny has become blurred. I don't know the course that I'm taking. I have dove off into things I shouldn't dive off into because I'm looking and I'm searching and I've got involved in things I know that will drown me. I'm needing to talk to somebody tonight. In the storms, if they were to sit in that boat and look across that sea, as the great waves come up high and back down, as waves would crash over the bow of the boat and fill the boat with water. If you were to turn to Peter, to James, to John and say, can you walk on that? Can you walk on that? Oh no, we about can't even float on it. Oh no, I can't walk on that. Do you suppose, Peter, if you could walk, you could just walk right on out of this storm? Maybe if I could walk on it, yeah, I might could. But I want you to know sometimes when you're looking at waves and you're feeling the boisterous winds, impossibilities get mighty huge in your eyes. But the truth is, when they have lost their course and they feel like nobody knows what is going on, nobody knows where they're at, Nobody knows the predicament they're in. I want you to know that there's somebody up on that mountain that has saw them toiling. There is somebody up on the mountain. How far away is the mountain? I don't know. But I know that the eyes of Christ has looked across and through the waves and through the wind, and however far it is, I want you to know that Christ knows every wave that crashes in the boat. Christ knows every toss and turn that the wind hits them with as he sits upon the mountain and he watches them. Sometimes when you are in a storm and it feels like you're fighting hell itself, I want you to know that it feels like nobody knows where you are, and nobody can come rescue you because you're so far out there. But I declare tonight in the face of the devil that you hadn't gone so far, that God can't come to where you are. You hadn't got so deep that God can't dive the depths to where you are. You may feel like you're all alone, and it may feel like all hope is gone. But the truth is, there is ever watching eyes that is over you, and there's not one tear that you've shed that God has not saw. There's not one word you spoke that God has not heard. There's not been one meal you fasted that God did not take notice of. There's not one prayer that you prayed that God has not heard it. Why, it may look like it's impossible to walk out this storm. It is impossible with the storm maker, with the wood maker, with the sea maker, and the sea walker. You can do some storm walking. You can do some storm walking. Understand that Christ began to walk across the sea. He had saw them from the mountain, and he saw that their faith was getting shaky and doubt was getting big. And he begins to make his journey with the intention of simply passing on by. Matthew didn't tell you that, but that's the whole reason I read from Mark. Is because I wanted you to know something tonight, that you still got choices you got to make. Monday night I preached to you about choices. Last night I asked you the question, will you? And tonight I want you to know we're still got to make some choices. We got to make some choices. They began to see a figure that is coming across the water. And understanding the Jewish people in this point of history, they're very superstitious. And so immediately fear grips their heart and they began to cry out, it's a spirit. It's a spirit. They was expecting to be some old demon of some sort, some old ghost coming across there. And it was scaring them to death. Now I need you to buckle your seatbelt. I need to preach something to you. Sometimes what may be scaring you to death right now may be no more than the hand of God coming your way. What is scaring you to death right now and it making you so uncomfortable, and it's making you search your heart and your mind, and it's making you feel so uneasy, and it's making fear grip your heart, may be no more than Jesus passing by your way. I want you to know you may have had a cold shoulder towards Christ, but God knows how to get your attention. God knows how to make you pay attention. And it may be what it looks like it's about to rip you in two and scare you to death. It may be just the hand of God that's beckoning you for change, that's beckoning you to make a choice, and you're scared of it, and you're weary of it, and you're tired of it. But it may be no more than the hand of God as He's providentially planted the chest of your life, putting one piece in front of another to get you where you need to be, you're scared. You are scared. You are scared. But who's to say it's nothing but God working out his providential plan to get you where you need to be? Can I be bold with you tonight? Some of you have made progress. Some of you have made progress, but you're not where you need to be. You've made progress, but you're not where you need to be with God. And you have been uncomfortable in this meeting, and you've been fearful in this meeting, and it is no more than the Spirit of God talking to you. It is no more than the Spirit of God dealing with you. And you know what he's doing? He's drawing. He's drawing. He's trying to draw you close to him. What will be your response? You're in a storm. The storm is raging in your life. It's time to walk. It is time to walk. Now, the Bible said that Jesus' intention was simply to pass by them. So if he could have stood on the mountain and accomplished the same thing he did by walking by them, then what is the purpose of him walking by them? Well, I can't say I got it all figured out, but this is what occurred to me. That when God begins to hear the cries, that when God begins to see the trouble, there's just something about the love of God. Stand up for me, Pastor. That when God has been way up yonder, beholding what you're going through, and he can do whatever he needs to from way up there. But if he could hear the pleas and know the troubled heart, there's just something about the troubled heart of his children makes him leave that mountain. And maybe all he wants to do is just get a little closer to where you are. You may be weary, and it may be God's intention just to walk closely by, just to slip on by. But there is a cry that's given, and the power of a cry made God's will change. Because his will was just to pass by. But when they begin to cry out to him, and when they begin to lift their voice up to him, the will of God changed. Because where he was going to pass by, he begins to come their way. I want you to know tonight that if you're willing to cry out to God, if you're willing to lift your voice to God, who knows that God may turn something that you wasn't expecting to turn, who knows that God may change directions on the way that you're going, but will you make a cry? Will you lift your voice to him? Do you want to walk? But something about the plea. You could take this and preach on the power of a cry. I might do that sometime. But that plea that Christ was normally going this way. But when he heard the cries and the prayers and the weeping, somehow he turns and begins to walk to right where the cries are. I believe tonight that if I was in the heat of the battle, if my life was falling apart, I would fall in these altars and I would lift my voice and say, oh God, I'm wrong, I've sinned, I've come short, I'm in a battle, whatever the case may be, because no telling what God will do for you tonight. Walking on the storm. And so it is that sometimes while we face storms, it would be nice just to stand right up in the middle of that storm and walk right out of it. Leave the boat, leave the waves. I'm by myself. Leave the boat, leave the waves, and leave it all back there. But sometimes God has intentions of teaching you some things while you in that boat that's filling up with water. Does it mean that God don't care? Oh, no. He's just trying to grow you. Just trying to grow you. But so it is that the power of the cry changed the will of God. Changed the will of God. Oh, now, preacher, he's omnipotent. Oh, yes, he is. He is the ultimate authority. Oh, yes, he is. But he also loves me, and he loves you. And when I cry, he listens. When you cry, he listens. And so it is now. We're getting right on to what I need to talk to you about. There it is. It had been so nice to get up and walk out of that boat and leave that storm back there. Just leave it. Now, Jesus is making his way toward that rocking ship. But Peter, somehow being his type of personality, says, Lord, if that's really you, Lord, if that's really you, bid me come. I wonder what he was expecting. One word answer. Come. You know what Christ has been telling you this week? Come. I'm talking to somebody tonight. I may be preaching slow, but this is what Christ has been bidding you. Come. Come. The Spirit of God has been in every night of this revival. And he's bidding you come and come. Now, we are at the point of a choice. You put God to the test, didn't you? You spoke up. You spoke up. You spoke up. Guess what? Christ spoke back. And he said, come. Come. Now you got a choice to make. Are you going to walk on this storm, or are you going to drown in it? God's beckoning. God's calling you. God's moving, and he's dealing in this service right here, right now. And if you want to walk on this storm, you can walk on it. Because Jesus said, come. He got up, and Peter walked on water. Sometimes we can't hardly preach this without thinking about he failed and began to sink. But the truth is, Peter walked on water twice. He walked on water before he failed, and he walked on water after he failed. You may be saying, I've messed up too bad, preacher. I'm in too big of a mess. I'm too tore up. My life is too shattered. I'm too big of a waste. I've tried this and I've tried that. I've tried yonder, I've tried back here, and I'm at a loss. I'm stuck in here. I've tried church, I've tried God, but I'm right back where I started from. I want you to know that you can get up and walk again. You can walk again. You don't have to drown. All you have to say is, Lord, save me. You know what he'll do? The Bible said immediately he stretched forth his hand and pulled him back up. And you know what? Peter walked on water again. You can walk on storms. You can walk on the waves. You can walk on the heartache. You can walk on the tears. You can walk on the disappointment. You can walk on everything that you love and come on up and serve God. There is hope for you. There is change for you. You don't have to stay where you are. Let's do some storm walking tonight. Some storm walking. Storm walking. Toe up. Messed up. Maybe you've made a choice for Christ, but you have failed back. And you're sinking deeper and deeper and deeper. Peter was doing that. I want you to know that he was sinking, but he wasn't sunk. He was sinking, but he wasn't sunk. You listen to me. You're sinking. You're sinking, but you're not sunk. You need to grab hold of that. You're headed down a dangerous journey. You're headed towards death, and you headed towards an end. Stay with me now. You're headed there, but you're not too far gone. You're not too far gone. All hope is not gone. That devil that's been telling you to harm yourself, I rebuke him right now in the name of Jesus. And I come against him in the name of the Lord. I rebuke you. While you've been slipping back and taking razor blades and cutting yourself so you can feel something, so you can finally feel like you're in control, I rebuke that devil in the name of Jesus. That is not the will of God. That is not the will of God. Jesus bids you come. And just as sure as Christ has said, come, you can walk on this storm. You can walk. Oh, God. Whew. Oh, God. Whew. Oh, I feel a soberness. Y'all feeling what I'm feeling? You know what Christ has done tonight? He has walked out on your storm. He has walked to where you are at tonight. He has come to that place. And you've even tested him. And when you tested him, he said, come on. Come on. And as long as you will keep your eyes on Christ and quit looking at what's around you and who is around you and what is around you and the waves that's around you and the wind that's blowing around you, quit looking at that and you keep your eyes on Christ, you will walk out of this storm. You can take your black book out and write it down that I said it. You will walk out of this. You may have to walk a while in the storm, but long as your eyes is on Christ, he will walk you to right where you need to be. Would you please give me a song? Church, if you've prayed air service in this revival, I need you to start praying right now. The devil's at work even now. In this church now.
There's a choice that each man
because who I'm pulling for, the devil's going to try to distract them.
It's a choice which
we don't want no distraction.
He cannot deny. For his soul's destiny,
would you please stand?
Lies in how he will choose. For the soul must live.
We're going to give a general altar call. We are. We're going to give a general where we invite everybody. But what I want to do right now is I don't want to snatch opportunity away from you that God may be giving you. And if you feel in your heart that God's beckoning you to change and to come to him, I want you to be the very first one to step out of here and get in these altars tonight. As I hold everybody back right now. Church, please pray with me. Please. We need God's help in this service. We need God's help. We rebuke the devil in the name of Jesus.
Is all up to you.
But there's some souls that need help from God. You need to move. Sir, you need to move. Ma'am, you need to move towards God. Preacher, you're sure being bold. I may be, and I'll be willing to be accused of that if I can keep you out of hell by preaching the gospel to you. Tonight, would you pray? Christ is saying, come. Would you pray tonight? Would you come? Would you come? I'm fixing to have to call for everybody. But before I do, I'm giving you this opportunity. I'm giving you this opportunity. Just tell God, I'm coming, God. I'm coming. I'm coming.
They live every
I'm coming, God. I'm coming.
sin.
I don't know how, but I'm stepping out of the boat tonight.
They intend to
Hallelujah.
get right.
Come on and get serious with God.
Sometime
Find you a place to pray and
later on.
weep and pray before
But
God
when
tonight.
death knocks, there'll be no
Hallelujah,
time
hallelujah,
there.
hallelujah. Anybody else?
Or somewhere
Would you like to
between
pray?
your cradle and
Would you like to
your
pray? Okay.
grave.
Here's what we need
You
tonight. We need for
must
everybody to come out
decide
here.
what
Please, I need
to
all the help I can get in these
do.
altars tonight. Please. I need you to come pray with
Be it
people. I need you to come
heaven
pray.
or
We got folks that's
hell,
needing to seek God.
each